Part 9. The regent is a yandere who needs to be pampered. Author, Nan Huang. Chapter 81. Rong Yu lowered his eyes slightly, looked at the bright and beautiful face of the girl beside him, and whispered, "No. Nothing." Nan 11 raised her eyebrows. "Your Highness, are you saying that I didn't commit treason?" "The girl didn't commit treason." Yin Yu frowned and retorted disapprovingly, "My prince likes the girl to be arrogant, so that she looks energetic, unlike those rigid girls from aristocratic families. Except for their different looks, other aspects are like they were carved from the same mold, dignified and boring like a puppet." Nan 11 turned her head and glanced at her. "Yin Yu, are you the worm in your prince's stomach? Otherwise, how can you know him so well?" "Ah." Yin Yu was speechless, and then curled her lips. "I am not worm." Yin Yu felt a chill. As a qualified subordinate, isn't it right to always understand the master's preferences? There are so many ladies from noble families in the imperial capital, all of them are beautiful and talented, and they all claim to be elegant, dignified, virtuous, and kind, but her prince never even glanced at them, and only loved Miss Nan. Isn't it because Miss Nan has a special temperament? Rong Yu held Nan 11's palm and said in a pleasant voice, "Don't listen to her nonsense." "Nonsense?" Nan 11 raised her eyebrows. "Does the prince mean that Yin Yu is wrong?" Rong Yu said, "You are not arrogant." "Oh, so that's what you said." Nan 11 laughed, but there was a soft light in her eyes. "Then why does the prince like me? Isn't it because of my special temperament?" Her tone was a little relaxed and playful, as if she was joking. In fact, she knew better than anyone that if those rigid girls from noble families were all carved out of the same mold, then she, Nan 11, was no exception. In her previous life, wasn't she also dignified and reserved, claiming to be a lady from a noble family? It was just that God had mercy on her and she was able to see things more clearly after living a new life. Life is not easy, so she should do whatever she wants. Even though some people always say that she is fickle, vain, and greedy for wealth and fame, Nan 11 doesn't care at all. She just thinks that they are just saying that the grapes are sour because they can't eat them. After all, she had already broken off the engagement with Gu Qingshu in person, and had someone go out to publicize it. Many people already knew that Nan Yu was pregnant with Gu Qingshu's child, but they still enjoyed throwing dirty water on her. Isn't it just envy, jealousy and hatred? Be it arrogant or bullying, I have the prince to protect me anyway. What do I have to be afraid of? Nan 11 said, with a slight smile on her lips. I'm not afraid of people saying I'm arrogant, as long as the prince doesn't dislike me. The prince won't dislike the girl, Yin Yu muttered. Even if the girl is more willful and capricious, the prince will only think the girl is cute. Nan 11 turned her head and glanced at her faintly. You are the only one who talks too much. Yin Yu stuck out her tongue and smiled embarrassedly. She was telling the truth. I won't dislike it. Rong Yu rubbed her head, with a smile in his eyes. I like your arrogant look. Nan 11 blushed. After walking out of the palace gate, Qing Yang, who was guarding the carriage, quickly looked at Nan 11. Is the girl okay? Did you make things difficult for her? How could no one make things difficult for her? Yin Yu frowned, thinking of the ignorant Bai sisters and the concubines who deliberately went to Fenji Palace to watch the show, and snorted coldly. They were all waiting to show the girl a good show, but they didn't expect that they would be the ones who got the good show in the end. Humph, they deserved it? Qing Yang groaned, annoyed that he didn't see the wonderful scene. Miss Nan was bullied in the harem, and his prince would definitely not sit idly by. Those imperial concubines and ladies were not afraid to see people today because of his prince. He would definitely ask Yin Yu later and let her tell him in detail what happened in the palace. Nan 11 glanced at Qing Yang with a subtle look, and knew what he was annoyed about from his expression, but she probably couldn't understand how a grown man could have such a strong curiosity. Moreover, Qin Jiang's erratic personality is totally inconsistent with Rongjio's personality. How did he manage not to be exiled to the frontier for so long? Nan 11 smiled, bent down and walked into the carriage, and Ranjio also accompanied Nan 11 in the carriage. The two chatted all the way back to the Prime Minister's mansion. Nan 11's good mood ended after stepping into the gate of the mansion. The eldest lady is back. The housekeeper came forward to greet her, respectfully saluted the regent, and then whispered, "The master is furious in Tingyukshuan." The smile on Nan 11's face disappeared instantly, and she frowned and said coldly, "What's wrong with my father?" The master said that he wanted to hire a teacher for the young master, and he needed a sum of money, but the lady was unwilling to pay it. "How much money does it cost to hire a teacher?" Nan 11 sneered. "Are you asking for a lot of money under the pretext of hiring a teacher?" The housekeeper didn't say anything. Nan 11 turned to Rongyu and said, "I'm going to see my mother. You go back to the regent's mansion and wait for me." Rongyu said, "Let's go together." Nan 11 thought for a moment and said, "Okay." The two walked to Ting Yuxian together and heard his father's furious voice from afar, "You come from a merchant family. It's okay that you are of lower status. You only gave birth to a daughter in these years. You don't even have the fate of a mother with a son. You only know how to fiddle with those yellow and white vulgar things all day long. You are stained with the smell of money. How can you have the noble elegance of other ladies from aristocratic families? If it weren't for the relationship between husband and wife in the past, I would have divorced you long ago. Don't be ungrateful." The words drilled into Nan 11's eardrums like thunder and rain, and her face immediately turned cold. She quickened her pace and rushed into Tingyu Pavilion. "What nonsense is father talking about here?" Nan Xingzi's face changed slightly, and he subconsciously turned his head to look at Nan 11, who suddenly came back. "If it weren't for the past relationship between husband and wife, you would kick my mother out of the house, right?" Nan 11 sneered. "What a heartless Chen Shimei. If my mother hadn't given you so much money to make you worry-free and read sage books, how could you have the prestige of the Prime Minister today? How dare you?" Nan Xingzi saw Nan 11 coming back, and he was a little guilty at first, but when he heard this accusation, he was immediately angry. "Nan 11, who are you talking to? Am I wrong?" Nan 11's expression was as cold as ice. "Father has read sage books for many years, but sage books only taught him to be ungrateful, but it did not teach my father to be grateful. The sage book did not teach my father to be a sage, but it showed his indifference to the fullest." "Shut up," Nan Xingzi was furious. "Nan 11, you are too presumptuous. Who gave you the courage to accuse me? Do you still know who your father is? If I can choose, I would rather you were not my father." Nan 11 walked into the house and calmed down. "I would rather my mother marry an honest hunter in the mountains and live a peaceful life, than have her sincerity trampled by you." Window. Tabula equals window. Tabula. Tabula.push, mode, thumbspeed -01, container, tabula below article thumbnail -300x250, placement, below article thumbnail -300x250, target. Type, mix. The regent is a yandere who needs to be pampered. Author, Nan Huang. Chapter 82. Nan Xingzi's face turned green and white, and he was about to get angry, but out of the corner of his eye he caught a glimpse of a figure in black robes walking over. His solemn majesty and noble demeanor were intimidating. Nan Xingzi's expression changed, and the words he was about to blurt out were stuck in his throat. He bowed in panic and embarrassment. I see the regent." Rongyu said nothing, his cold and dignified eyebrows were calm. "The regent is here." Mrs. Nan, who was sitting on the low couch in front of the window, flipping through her account books, and remained indifferent to Nan Xingzi's anger, raised her head and looked at her daughter. 11 you came with the regent?" Nan 11 nodded, walked over and sat down opposite her mother. "Is this a reconciliation, mother?" Mrs. Nan nodded, closed the ledger, stood up and walked out. "What are you doing, mother?" The Prince Regent is here. Mrs. Nan glanced at her. Shouldn't I salute him? How dare she have the courage to sit in the room as if nothing happened when the Prince Regent came to visit? What if the Regent is unhappy and takes it out on her daughter? It shouldn't be necessary. Nan 11 reached out and pulled her mother. When I marry him, he will be your son-in-law. How can a mother-in-law and a son-in-law salute? Don't talk nonsense. Mrs. Nan scolded in a low voice. The master of heaven and earth, the regent's status is noble, and it comes before kinship. You can't mess around. Nan 11's mouth twitched. She didn't even kneel down to the emperor or the queen in the palace. If her mother found out, wouldn't she be frightened to death? Whether it is the relationship between monarch and subject that comes first or the relationship that comes after, isn't it all a matter of a word from the regent? Nan 11 smiled lightly. Mom, don't worry, it's really okay. Regardless of whether she was busy or not, Mrs. Nan could not let the regent stand outside like this. She walked to the door and saw the slender and dignified man in a gold-woven black robe outside. Mrs. Nan was startled for a moment. Stunned. This was the first time she had looked at the regent Rongyu so closely. It was really perfect. Both appearance and demeanor are impeccable. Compared with the soft-fed Gu Qingshu, one is a noble cloud crane in the sky and the other is a toad underground. Mrs. Nan marveled at her daughter's good taste in her heart. She came to her senses and was about to salute when Rongyu said lightly, Madam, there is no need to be polite. Mrs. Nan then stopped being polite and raised her eyes and said, Your Majesty, please come in and sit down. Nan Xingzi was left aside and no one paid attention to him. His face was a little uneasy, and he spoke coldly and majestically, 11 my father has something to say to you. Father, if you have something to say, just say it here. Nan 11 said calmly, you can tell others everything you want. Nan Xingzi was annoyed and said coldly, some things can only be said in private. Rongyu walked into the room and sat down on the chair next to Nan 11. Mrs. Nan ordered tea to be served. Although she is not as arty as the ladies from aristocratic families, her wealth is also an advantage. The tea in Mrs. Nan's room is top-notch Yunwumajianer, which even those princes and princesses may not be able to match. It's not that the princes and princesses can't afford it, it's just that it's not as convenient as Mrs. Nan. After all, people who own a tea mountain have already developed the ability to taste and recognize tea, even if they don't pursue any taste. The light fragrance of tea lingered on the tip of her nose. Mrs. Nan smiled and said, This is Lingshan Yunwuo, a new tea from early spring this year. It was picked and fried. I rushed to deliver it. Your Majesty, please try it. She spoke calmly, but although the few people present did not know that new tea goes through many tedious processes from screening to frying after picking, they did know that it was thousands of miles away from Lingshan to the capital, and even if they were working hard, they would have to stay awake day and night. On the way, outsiders thought that Mrs. Nan was just a merchant, but few knew how powerful this merchant's industry was. Rongyu doesn't know either. However, the number of properties in Mrs. Nan's hands has nothing to do with him. Except for Nan 11's words, I have money, you have power, we are a perfect match that can affect his joy, nothing else matters. Rongyu held the teacup, closed his eyes and took a sip, feeling the refreshing and special fragrance of tea spreading in his mouth, lingering in his mouth, leaving people with endless aftertaste. Rongyu said, Madam's tea is good tea. Nan 11 smiled and said, although my mother spends a lot of money, she has never used top-quality clouds to entertain guests. Your Majesty is the first one. Rongyu raised his eyes to look at her, his dark eyes were deep and gentle, it's my pleasure. Nan 11 pursed her lips and smiled, her pretty face slightly blushing. Don't listen to 11's nonsense. Mrs. Nan added some tea to him, if the prince thinks this tea is good, he can bring a few cans back later. Nan 11 saw that Rongyu didn't show any airs when he came to her mother's place, just like an ordinary son-in-law would do when meeting his mother-in-law. She couldn't help but look at her mother. My mother already knows about the princes coming to the house to propose marriage this morning. Mrs. Nan nodded. Nan Xingzi's face became particularly ugly, and he couldn't help but said, as for the regent's proposal of marriage, I think it needs to be carefully considered and cannot be decided hastily. Mom, let's discuss the specific matters of the marriage with the prince. My daughter doesn't know much about this. If she needs to prepare any betrothal gifts, mother can just ask the prince. Nan 11 made suggestions, as if she hadn't heard her father's words. The marriage to the prince must be done with great splendor, so that everyone in the world knows that I am married to the regent. Nan Xingzi's face turned green. Don't worry madam. Nan patted her chest and promised, completely treating Nan Xingzi as an invisible man, I will definitely make it a glorious event for you. Nan 11 pursed her lips and smiled, winked at Rong Yu, then stood up and looked at Nan Xingzi. Since father is not convenient to talk here, let's go to the study. Nan Xingzi suppressed his anger and said to the regent, please forgive me, your majesty. I have something to say to Nan 11. I will leave first. Rong Yu said nothing, just lowered his eyebrows and sipped his tea. Nan Xingzi and Nan 11 left Ting Yuxuan one after another and went to the study of Song Haiwen. As soon as they closed the door, Nan Xingzi said coldly, I don't agree with your marriage with the regent. Nan 11 was not surprised at all when he heard this. After all, they have different positions, it would be strange if he agreed. But I have made up my mind. Even if my father disagrees, he can't stop me from marrying into the regent's mansion. Nan Xingzi's face was gloomy. Do you know what you are doing? Nan 11, you are the daughter of the Nan family. The Prime Minister's mansion is loyal to the current emperor, not the regent. If you really marry him, you will be tied to him from now on. Nan 11 said calmly, I am willing. Nan Xingzi gritted his teeth, have you ever thought about your mother? When the emperor sits firmly on the throne, the first person to be dealt with is the regent. If you marry him, I will definitely not let you off when the day comes to settle the score. I'm prepared. Nan 11 said calmly, since you've chosen to marry him, I will share the responsibility with him no matter what happens in the future. Bullshit, Nan Xingzi said sternly, you share the responsibility with him? What can you bear? Even if you are not afraid of death, don't let your mother get involved. Nan 11 curled her lips mockingly, father's words are so sonorous and righteous. If someone who doesn't know the inside story hears it, they may think that father has a deep affection for my mother. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The regent is a yandere who needs to be pampered. Author, Nan Huang. Chapter 83. Nan Xingzi's breath was stuck in his throat, almost choking him and making him speechless. 11 He took a deep breath and forced himself to talk to her calmly, the marriage with Gu Qingshu is dissolved. I won't force you to marry him, but marrying the regent is absolutely impossible. No, if I don't agree, you can't leave this cabinet. Nan 11 raised her eyebrows, father isn't worried about angering the regent. After all, my father is also the prime minister of the court. Nan Xingzi said coldly, even if the regent is in a high position and has great power, he cannot force a first-class prime minister to marry his daughter. If the matter spreads, he will only fall into the trap of robbing the minister's daughter based on his status. Notoriety. If Rong Yu cared about reputation, he would not have trapped her in the palace for more than a year in his previous life. He has always been a person who only acted according to his own preferences. Who can restrain him? The emperor cannot, the prime minister cannot, and neither can the constraints of secular morality. Because he doesn't care at all. But Nan 11 cares. If she just plans to marry the regent, and the couple will sing and sing, playing the piano, not thinking about anything, and just live a normal life, then Nan 11 will naturally not care about the rumors outside. But she knew in her heart that they could only be vigorous in this life and could not be ordinary. Therefore, Rong Yu's reputation cannot be damaged. "Father, don't worry," she said calmly, "I married the regent willingly, he was not forced to do so, so the rumors will not hurt him. As for whether it will implicate my mother, father, don't worry, I have already thought of a perfect plan." Nan Xingzi's face was gloomy. "Don't worry. Do you really think he is worried that rumors will slander the regent, or that Nan 11's choice will implicate her mother? What he was worried about was the antagonistic relationship between the regent and the emperor. When the emperor settles accounts with the regent in the future, will the Nan mansion be implicated?" 11er Nan Xingzi softened his attitude, and his tone was a bit proactive and apologetic. "I have been ashamed of your mother these years, not because I am ungrateful, but because you don't understand many things in the officialdom. I feel sorry for you. Mothers have feelings, and you are my only legitimate daughter. I hope that you and your mother can live a stable life." Nan 11 nodded. "Well, I believe my father really thinks so." Sincere words. That. If father is really worried about me, he might as well change his position. Nan 11 smiled lightly. After all, the power of the king and the power of the prime minister have been in opposition since ancient times. The emperor has not yet secured his throne, so he thinks highly of his father and wants to take advantage of it. My father came to deal with the regent, but if he can even kill his own uncle, how can he be sure that the emperor will not burn bridges and uproot the Nanfu after his foundation is stable? Nan 11, Nan Xingzi's face changed suddenly. "What nonsense are you talking about?" Nan 11 looked calm. "You have to be careful what you say in your own home." Nan Xingzi's brows and eyes were full of anger. He found that Nan 11, who had been to the regent's palace for more than a month and then came back, had completely changed from before, as if she had suddenly changed into a different person, which he could not see through. But he knew that he couldn't estrange the relationship with her. Just like he had been wanting to divorce his wife all these years but never dared to take action. Mrs. Nan held the financial power in her hands, so he could only endure it again and again. 11er He suppressed his anger and said earnestly, "There will only be one king in this world, and there is only one person who can rule the country. There is no room for others to sleep soundly on the side of the bed. Can't tolerate others sleeping soundly?" Nan 11 secretly thought that it would be easy for Rong Yuruo to pull the emperor off the dragon couch. When the time comes, let alone the side of the bed, it is guaranteed that he will be accompanied by cockroaches and rats in front, back, left and right, and he will have no time to think about whether anyone else is sleeping soundly on the side of the dragon bed. The emperor is already an adult emperor. He will gradually establish himself as a king and hold great power in the future. Once he wins the hearts of his ministers, the regent will have no reason to hold on to the power of regent. Do you think he can still be as prosperous as he is today? Nan Xingzi is earnest and seductive, like a kind father teaching his ignorant daughter. You should know that when the king is angry, millions of corpses will be buried. You don't want to see all the hard-earned things you have as a father because of your choices, and if everything is ruined, right? As long as your father is well, you are the glorious legitimate daughter of the prime minister. If something happens to your father, you can still stay out of it. Nan 11 raised her eyebrows and her eyes fell on his face. What father said makes sense. Nan Xingzi breathed a sigh of relief. I'll think about it, she said, turning around and walking out. If there's nothing else, I'll go out first. Wait, Nan Xingzi said hurriedly, 11er, I haven't finished speaking as a father yet. Nan 11 raised the corners of her lips slightly and turned to look at him. Father, is there anything else you want to say? As for the regent's proposal of marriage, you don't have to rush to refuse him for the time being. When Nan 11 heard this, she stared at him for a long time, then raised her eyebrows with a smile but not a smile. What do you mean, father? Nan Xingzi looked a little embarrassed by her. This eldest daughter is indeed different from before. Her eyes are so bright and clear that even the intentions hidden in his heart are invisible. So much so that Nan Xingzi finds it difficult to say what he is about to say. Cough, the regent is determined to get you, maybe because he wants money, so. What does father mean to say that the regent is here for the property in my mother's hands? Nan Xingzi nodded. There are many noble ladies from famous families in the imperial capital. If it weren't for your mother's money, why would he marry you even though he knew that your father was the emperor's? The regent is in power. The army he has is certainly powerful, but it takes a lot of money to raise an army. He is planning in advance to prevent the emperor from controlling him over military pay in the future. Nan 11 almost laughed. She did laugh, and her laugh was mocking. Father is really worried about the emperor. Nan Xingzi's face turned green. Nan 11 wanted to tell him that even if the regent came for her mother's property, she would be willing to give him the money, not to mention that he was not. But as long as her mother was still in the Nan mansion, Nan 11 would not really break up with him. She was silent for a moment, then said calmly, "So father told me this because he wanted me to stay away from the regent and keep a safe distance from him." No. Nan Xingzi picked up the teacup on the table, as if to cover up something. "Father means that you can continue to associate with the regent, but there is no need to rush for marriage for the time being. If he has any abnormal behavior, you can withdraw in time." Nan 11 understood. Sure enough, it was the same routine and calculation as in the previous life. Wanting her to continue to associate with the regent was a lie, and asking her to keep an eye on the regent's movements was the real thing. But I'm sorry, it's enough for a person to be stupid once. In this life, she brought a brain with her and will not let others calculate again. "I'm a little sleepy tonight, I'll update 2000 first, and 2000 during the day. Good night, babies, don't stay up late, go to bed early." Window. Taboola equals window. Taboola. Taboola.push, mode, thumbspeed -01, container, Taboola below article thumbnail -300x250, placement, below article thumbnail -300x250, target. Type, mix. The regent is a yandere who needs to be pampered. Author, Nan Huang. Chapter 84. Father, if there is nothing else to do, I will go back first. Nan 11 smiled faintly, turned around, opened the study door and walked out, regardless of how unhappy Nan Xingzi looked behind him. The country is easy to change, but the nature is hard to change. A man like her father who is selfish by nature should never be expected to have any feelings at all, but it is not ambiguous for such a person to pretend to be a sentimental person, as long as it is profitable. As soon as I walked out of Songhe Garden, I looked up and saw a person standing under the sycamore tree not far in front. He was dressed in a black gold-woven robe and exuded nobility and coldness. His noble and indifferent profile was as perfect and delicate as a knife or axe. Whether viewed from the front or the side, it is impeccable. Nan 11's lips curled up into a smile, and her steps became brisk. "Your Majesty." Rong Yu turned around, his eyes caught the girl's smiling face, her eyebrows softened slightly. "Is the conversation over?" "Yes." Nan 11 walked over and looked up at his face. The more she looked at it, the happier she became. She couldn't help but stand on tiptoes and kissed him. "Why is the prince coming out?" Ever since she woke up that morning, Nan 11 seemed to be getting more and more accustomed to kissing him. This discovery made Rong Yu's heart soften, and while he was overjoyed, he felt that no matter how close he was, it wasn't enough. He will have an urge to hold her tightly in his arms and kiss her thoroughly, embed her into his body, make the two of them become one, want to take her to his belly, and make her live again in this life. There's no way to escape, but it's just a thought. He was afraid of scaring her. Rong Yu's eyebrows became softer and softer, and there seemed to be stars embedded in her eyes. He seemed to have 1,000 words to say to her, but in the end he only asked, should you go back for lunch today, or should you stay here with your mother? Nan 11 feels that where to eat is not the important point is whether Rong Yu said go back or stay, as if the regent's mansion is her home, and they are just guests in Nan mansion? Nan 11 didn't know if Rong Yu did it on purpose, but she thought about it and said, I'll ask my mother. Rong Yu hummed. The two of them returned to Ting Yuxuan together, and Mrs. Nan said, no need to stay here, I have to go out for something later, and I may come back in the evening. Nan 11 asked, Mom is busy with something? Do you need my help? You know nothing about business, how can you help? Mrs. Nan smiled, I will go to the shop to check the accounts with some stewards. You don't have to worry about it. Just go back with the prince. Going back again? Nan 11 was silent for a moment. She couldn't help but wonder, when she was away just now, had her mother and Rong Yu developed a tacit understanding that she was already a member of the regent's palace? It was obvious that she was forcibly imprisoned in the regent's mansion by Rong Yu a month ago, her mother should know. Even if she said she wanted to marry the regent, wasn't she not married yet? So strictly speaking, Nangxiang mansion is her home. Her mother and Rong Yu seemed to agree that the regent's palace was her home. Nan 11 murmured in her heart, but she didn't worry about it. She would be a member of the regent's palace sooner or later anyway. Just now, Kanyang and the prince discussed the marriage. How did the discussion go? Hearing this, Mrs. Nan glanced at Rong Yu subconsciously, and then smiled at Nan 11, the discussion was very good. The prince will find a reliable matchmaker to go through the process someday. It's a good day, so I have to hurry up. It's time to prepare your dowry. Speaking of dowry, Nan 11 couldn't help but think of what her father said in the study just now, and her eyebrows deepened. The dowry doesn't need to be too much, she said, just prepare it as an ordinary girl would do when she leaves the palace. Mrs. Nan raised her eyebrows slightly, that won't work. I have to let my daughter come out of the palace in a glorious way, even more majestic than the princess. It's not necessarily a good thing to steal the princess's limelight. It's not a bad thing, Mrs. Nan said calmly, you don't understand. The more my mother behaves like a rich man, the more relieved some people will be. I am doing this for you and the prince. Nan 11 was slightly surprised when she heard this. Don't worry, mother knows what's going on. Mrs. Nan smiled lightly, you and the prince go back first, and then come and see me when you have time. I may be busy these 2 days and may not always be in the house. Nan 11 frowned, will father cause trouble for you again? Your father has always wanted to divorce his wife since he became prime minister, but several years have passed and he has never dared to bring it up. Mrs. Nan's voice was light, with a hint of contempt on her lips, he is the one who makes trouble the most. It's just a mouthful, but I don't dare to mean it, so don't worry. After saying that, she added, although your father is the prime minister, don't forget who has been helping him all these years. I know very well how much power he has, openly and secretly, and how many people are at his disposal. Nan 11 clicked her tongue. She suddenly felt that her mother seemed very confident. She had been pretending to be a pig and eating the tiger? No. It should be said that her mother was simply too lazy to deal with people she didn't take seriously, so every time she faced provocations from her father and Aunt Lee and her daughter, it wasn't that she couldn't deal with it, but she just didn't bother to argue with them. Her father was selfish and profit-oriented. He valued fame, wealth, and face more than anything else. He always thought that having a wife who was a businessman would make him look shameless. He used to be able to pretend when he needed his wife's help, but now he doesn't even want to show off. Maintain it, but have no idea what kind of treasure you have missed. After the mother and daughter said a few more words, Nan 11 and Rong Yu left, walked out of the gate of the Prime Minister's mansion, and were respectfully seen off by everyone in the mansion and got into the carriage. As soon as she sat in the carriage, her slender body fell into the arms of a man with a refreshing breath. Nan 11 raised her eyes and looked at the handsome man, and said with a smile, "What are you going to do, your majesty?" "I'm not doing this for your mother's money." Outsiders say that I need money to raise troops, but if this money keeps coming from the treasury, it will inevitably be restricted by the emperor in the future, but he does not dare." Rong Yu's voice was light, but he was explaining to her, fearing that she would misunderstand, I also have some unknown properties, so I don't need your mother's money." Nan 11 blinked. "The prince himself has some properties." Rong Yu nodded. "So, the prince is actually a secretly wealthy man." Nan 11 knew that what she asked was nonsense. The power of the regent is overwhelming. If nothing else, let's talk about his current power. How could he be a man without money? But the money she meant was different from the money she has now. Hundreds of thousands of soldiers and horses are definitely not something that ordinary people with money can afford, so military pay has always come from the national treasury. At this time, Rong Yu said, he also has some properties. Although he said it lightly, just some, Nan 11 guessed that some industries are not far away from the rich countries. Nan 11 pondered for a moment. Did the prince just hear my father's conversation with me, so he told me this? After all, his father said that the regent was here for her mother's money. The regent is a yandere who needs to be pampered. Author, Nan Huang. Chapter 85. Rong Yu hummed. Nan 11 raised her eyebrows. "Since the prince is not after my mother's money, why marry me?" Rong Yu pursed his lips, and looked at her with a pair of deep black eyes. There seemed to be deep and strong emotions surging in his eyes. In a moment, he retracted his arms, circled her whole body in his arms, and directly lowered his head to cover her lips, telling her the reason with practical actions. Nan 11 was stunned for a moment, and felt that she was surrounded by a clear and pleasant breath. The clean and slightly cool feeling on her lips made her a little greedy and intoxicated. She just let him do whatever he wanted. In her mind, she only thought vaguely that men are so strong, and these arms are as hard as iron hoops. Until the arms around her body tightened, the man's low voice sounded in her ears, "Because it's you, I want to marry you." Rong Yu didn't dare to do whatever he wanted. Compared with Nan 11's every time, his was at best just a taste. Afraid of scaring her. Their relationship has just eased not long ago, he should cherish this hard-won change. Some things still need to be done slowly. Nan 11 was still immersed in the feeling of being kissed just now, and when she heard this, she subconsciously asked, "Because it's me?" "Yeah." What kind of answer is this? Because she is her? Nan 11 broke free from his arms and quickly regained her composure. "Is the prince flirting with me?" Rong Yu didn't say anything, just looked at her silently. "Don't you think it's too much for the prince to flirt with his ministers by relying on his high position and power?" Rong Yu was silent for a moment, and said sincerely, "I'll let you bully me back." Nan 11 looked at him without saying a word, and her eyes looked like she was looking at a fool. Rong Yu's eyes flashed a smile, but his voice was calm and confident. "It's only natural to pay back debts." So after flirting with her, let her flirt with him again? Nan 11 was speechless. Anyway, he didn't suffer any loss. But if we really talk about flirting, it seems that he was giving her face by not complaining before she flirted with him first. In fact, Rong Yu had not thought of this, but he was thoughtful and would not be stupid enough to really accuse her of being frivolous. Girls are thin-skinned. If she is embarrassed to flirt with him again in the future, he will still suffer the loss. The prince proposed this morning. Did the prime minister not agree? Rong Yu hummed. He didn't refuse directly, but just made an excuse to shirk. He doesn't want me to marry the prince, but wants me to stay with the prince to spy on military intelligence for him. Nan 11 raised the corner of her lips slightly, and a hint of mockery appeared on her face. On the surface, he said he was considering me, but in fact he was pushing me into the fire pit. Rong Yu lowered his eyes and looked at her. "I am the fire pit." The prince knows what I mean. Nan 11 looked up at him dissatisfiedly, stretched out her hand to pinch his noble face. The prince is not a fire pit, I'm not a trap, but my father asked me to stay by the prince's side as a spy. If I really do what he says, then no matter what the final result is, I will not have a good ending. Isn't this pushing into the fire pit? Even if you plot against me, I won't hurt you. Wrong. You grabbed her white and tender hand and kissed it on his lips, so I will never be your fire pit. At that moment, Nan 11 felt something running into her eyes, so that the heat rushed into her eye sockets, and the perfect outline of the man in front of her gradually blurred. She bit her lips tightly, trying to smile as if nothing had happened, but she couldn't do it. The bitterness in her heart turned into tears and flowed out uncontrollably. Rongyu was slightly stunned, obviously not expecting her to react so strongly, and reached out to wipe her tears in a somewhat helpless manner. What's wrong? What did I say wrong? No, Nan 11 shook her head, her eyes were red, and her hands grasped his robe tightly, choking and unable to speak. Even if you plot against me, I won't hurt you. The scenes from the previous life reappeared involuntarily, and Nan 11 couldn't help wondering why he could say such a sentence so calmly. Who in this world can remain free of resentment and hatred after being plotted against? But he really didn't question her until he died, and he still held her tightly in his arms, allowing the cold and sharp arrows to shoot into his body. He held her in his arms until he died, and never let go. Outsiders said he was cold and ruthless, but who knew that this person had also used his short life to interpret his foolish love? The more Nan 11 thought about it, the more uncomfortable she felt in her heart. Tears flowed freely, and Rongyu's heart was almost broken. The carriage arrived outside the gate of the regent's palace, and Qin Jiang's respectful voice rang out, "Your Majesty, we're here." Rongyu didn't say anything, but just quietly held Nan 11 in his arms. Although he didn't know why she was crying, he silently indulged her venting. Nan 11 took a deep breath and raised her hand to wipe away the crystal water stains from the corners of her eyes. "Rongyu." "Yeah." Rongyu answered her, his voice extremely gentle, "I'm here. I won't plot against you." She raised her eyes, which had just been washed by tears and were clean and clear, like the blue sky after the rain. "Even if I were to kill my own father and regicide, I would never plot against you." Rongyu's heart was beating, but he raised his finger to her lips. "Don't talk nonsense, I'm here, it's not your turn to kill your father and regicide." Nan 11 kissed his hand, "I'm just making an analogy." Rongyu's heart was moved, and he couldn't help wanting to hug her again. "The prince said a lot today." Nan 11 suddenly changed the subject, as if she had discovered a new world, with a bit of surprise in her tone. "I said more than ever before." Rongyu was silent for a moment. "Do you like me to talk more or less?" "I like them all." Nan 11 smiled. "It's obvious that he's easy to get close to if he talks a lot, but if he talks less, well, he has more personality and looks different from others." Rongyu could tell from the tone of her voice that her mood had calmed down a lot. She felt a little more at ease and said, "Let's get out of the car first." Nan 11 nodded. The two got off the carriage and walked into the palace. The housekeeper came over and saluted, and then reported, "Mr. Wen came here this morning and asked to see the prince. I said that the prince was not here and asked him to come back in the evening. The Prince Regent's palace is different from other palaces. When Rongyu took over the power of regent, ministers often came to ask for an audience. Rongyu liked to talk about things and hated cumbersome rules. Therefore, when ministers or princes from aristocratic families asked for an audience, he could directly tell the housekeeper that it was important. The housekeeper will report the matter to Rongyu. If Rongyu is away for something, the housekeeper will make other arrangements based on the priority of the matter." "Mr. Wen," Nan 11 looked indifferently, "the grandson of Teifu's mansion, Wen Lingfeng." The butler nodded, "That's Mr. Wen." Nan 11 said oh and said nothing more. She had just offended Wen Lan at the eldest princess's residence in the morning, and this young master when came to see the regent today? I don't know if it was a coincidence or if I was prepared. Window. Tabula equals window. Tabula. Tabula.push, mode, thumbs feed -01, container, tabula below article thumbnail -300x250, placement, below article thumbnail -300x250, target. Type, mix. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The regent is a yandere who needs to be pampered. Author, Nan Huang. Chapter 86. I went through a lot today. First, he went to the eldest princess's palace to attend Princess Bailing's birthday and dealt with so many people who were looking for trouble. Then he went to the palace to deal with the queen, concubines, and other boring people, then returned to the Nangxiang's palace, and finally returned to the regent's palace. Except for when I was riding in the carriage, I was almost never idle for a moment during the rest of the time. So much so that just half a day seemed like several days had passed. It was already noon when he returned to Zhaochen Hall. Rong Yu said to Nan 11, "Sit down and take a rest first. Should I instruct them to prepare lunch?" Nan 11 nodded, walked to the brocade couch in front of the carved window and sat down, slowly relaxing her body and half lying down. Rong Yu turned his head and glanced at Yin Yu. Yin Yu silently accepted the order and took the two maids standing beside him to go out to prepare lunch. "Are you tired?" Rong Yu knelt down in front of the couch, lifted one of Nan 11's feet and put it on the couch, pinching her ankle with moderate force. "Does it hurt?" "Whether it hurts or not is not the point." Nan 11 sat up straight, stared at him silently for a moment, and whispered, "The prince has a noble status, how can he do the work of serving others?" Hearing this, Rong Yu raised his eyes and looked at her. "You don't like it?" "It's not whether I like it or not, but..." Nan 11 frowned, "This is too disrespectful to your identity." Rong Yu shook his head, "It doesn't matter." As he spoke, he lowered his eyes and carefully pinched her from her ankle to her calf. "I don't feel wronged." Nan 11 was silent for a moment, unable to say a word, and just looked at him quietly. "In fact, I should have been a little moved at first, but thinking that this person could even give him his life, I felt that being moved at this time was too pretentious." Nan 11 suddenly had the feeling that when a person has another person in his heart, he can really humble himself in the dust, as if he is willing to do anything for the other person without any regrets. Even though she knew that being moved was a bit pretentious, she still couldn't help being moved by it. The more she got to know this person, the more she felt that he was good in every aspect. He was full of advantages, which made her feel happier the more she looked at him. "Rong Yu." Rong Yu raised his head and his tone became softer unconsciously. "You take a rest for a while. If you have anything to say, you can wait until dinner later. Be good." Good. This was the second time she heard this word from his mouth after waking up. Nan 11 couldn't help but want to laugh. It was a bit funny and she felt inexplicable joy. Although he sounded like he was coaxing a child, did this mean that in his heart, he actually treated her as a child and doted on her? Nan 11 leaned on the brocade couch and did not refuse his gesture of relieving her fatigue, although she did not feel any obvious discomfort. "Won't the prince go to the military camp today?" Nan 11 chatted with him one after another. "I didn't go yesterday afternoon. With Ling Fan and Qi Lin here, it doesn't matter if I don't go." Rong Yu lowered his head and pressed his long and strong fingers along her calf. Wisps of warm qi entered the meridians from the fingertips, making people feel warm and comfortable. Nan 11 couldn't help but narrowed her eyes slightly. She knew that Ling Fan and Qi Lin were the two most powerful generals under Rong Yu. Ling Fan was more powerful and the first person in the Suanjia army to charge into battle. Qi Lin is talented in arranging troops, and Rong Yu personally taught him for a period of time. He can be regarded as a capable general trained step by step, and both of them are loyal to Rongyu and never have two hearts. This was also the second reason for the emperor's fear. But those who were brought out by Rongyu were unmatched by anyone else in their stubborn loyalty to Rongyu. Even if others tried their best to drive a wedge between them, it would be useless. It really made some people beat their chests with anger. However, when mentioning these two generals, Nan 11 couldn't help but think of the traitor in the regent's palace, and wanted to remind Rongyu, but she had some concerns. Would he wonder where she knew about the traitor? After all, she was just a little girl, not a prince or minister who played tricks all day long. How could she know that there was such a secret thing as a traitor in the regent's palace? After hesitating for a moment, Nan 11 asked, "The emperor is afraid that the prince has great power, so will he quietly plant an informant in the regent's palace?" Rongyu was a little surprised and couldn't help but look up at her, as if he was surprised that her mind was so sharp. "Why did you think of asking this?" "I just thought about seeing the emperor's expression in the palace today when he was obviously very angry but had to hold it back. At this time, I calmed down and felt some worries in my heart, fearing that the emperor would be unfavorable to the prince." Nan 11 frowned slightly, looking worried. "Although I have regained my reputation, embarrassing them in public can make those people temporarily remember the lesson, but they will definitely hold grudges." Sighing, Nan 11 said, "Now that I think about it, I was actually too impulsive. The world is so big, could it be the king's land? The shore of the land, could it be the king's ministers? I actually put the majestic king of a country and the queen who is the mother of the world. I'm so offended. Now that I think about it, I'm really brave, even I admire myself." If the first few sentences contained a bit of hindsight and worry, then in the end, it seemed to be a self-deprecating tone. "Don't worry." Rongyu reached out and rubbed her head, "as long as I'm here, no one dares to touch you." Nan 11 hummed, her voice soft and gentle, as if she was coquettish, "I believe you, your majesty." The girl's voice was pleasant to the ear, with a hint of deliberate softness. When she heard it, her heart felt as if feathers were gently brushing against it, with a tingling feeling that made Rongyu feel like she was actually there for a moment. Illusions in dreams. After calming down, he thought about the question she asked and said lightly, "There are indeed spies planted by the emperor in the palace, but they will not be a big deal, so you don't have to worry about it." Nan 11's heart was moved. It seems that Rongyu actually knew that all the actions the emperor took to deal with him were just letting it go. Because just like he said, it will not be a big deal. Come to think of it, it is not easy to make a person like Rongyu fail. Unless he is calculated by the person he cares about the most. Nan 11's eyebrows were gloomy. Whenever she thought of her previous life, she would feel a suffocating pain and guilt in her heart. She didn't say anything, closed her eyes, and hid her thoughts. Half an hour later, Yanyu led the maids to put a rich meal on the table in the outer hall. Each dish was exquisite, colorful, fragrant, and delicious, and it would make people salivate just by looking at it. "This is the first time I have a peaceful meal with the prince." Nan 11 sat down at the table and said with some emotion, "My heart is full of mixed feelings." In the days of imprisonment before, whenever she was with Rongyu, she never ate properly. In order to prevent her from starving, Rongyu almost never appeared in front of her at lunch and dinner time. Now that I think about it, it seems like a lifetime ago. Yanyu smiled beside her. "In the future, the girl can eat with the prince every day. You will get used to it after doing it more often." Window. Tabula equals window. Tabula. Tabula.push, mode, thumbs feed -01, container, tabula below article thumbnail -300x250, placement, below article thumbnail -300x250, target. Type, mix. The regent is a yandere who needs to be pampered. Author, Nan Huang. Chapter 87. Do you get used to it after using it a lot? Nan 11 imagined in her mind that she and Rongyu would sleep in the same bed every day, and when she woke up in the morning and saw a handsome and noble face, she would be in a good mood. Dining with him every day, the two of them can chat while eating, chatting about things in the military camp, and interesting things happening among the major families in the imperial city. Even if it is just gossip, it should be a happy thing. After all, the existence of this person is a sight that is pleasing to the eye. Nan 11 pursed her lips and smiled. I'm afraid that in 3 to 5 years, your prince will get tired of looking at my face and not want to sit and have dinner with me. How could it be? Yunya quickly retorted, the prince is not such a person. Nan 11 raised her eyebrows, how do you know it's not the case? Can you predict and see what will happen a few years from now? This. Yunya was speechless. She couldn't help but glance at her prince, and then hesitantly said, the prince has only liked one girl in these years. Even if others take the initiative to throw themselves into his arms, the prince will not take another look. Someone took the initiative to throw themselves into the arms of your prince. Nan 11 frowned, who? Yunya was stunned for a moment, then realized that she had also said the wrong thing, and quickly explained, how can anyone throw themselves into my arms? This subordinate is just a metaphor, girl, please don't take it seriously. Nan 11 chuckled. Yunya blinked and realized that the girl was teasing her. She couldn't help but stamp her feet, I'll leave first. Rongyu listened to the two of them talking the whole time and did not participate or refute anything. It was not until Yunya resigned and left that he whispered, I won't get tired of it. Nan 11 was used to his taciturn way of speaking, and knew that he was saying that he would not get tired of watching him for a long time, so she smiled playfully and said, I know, I was teasing her just now. Rongyu hummed and served her some dishes. In the future, tell me what you like or don't like. Rongyu's tone was a little more leisurely. Perhaps it was the relaxed atmosphere at this time that made him a little different from usual. Whether it's food or clothing, you don't need to hide your preferences or other preferences. Nan 11 held her chin and looked at him with calm and gentle eyes. I suddenly felt like a little princess being held in the palm of my hand. As soon as he said this, Rongyu's expression tightened slightly. You want to be a princess? Nan 11 felt strange. Although Rongyu's expression didn't change much, the subtle emotional fluctuations between her brows and eyes still couldn't escape her eyes. Although Nan 11 was puzzled, she shook her head. If I were a princess, wouldn't I become the prince's sister? Oh no, it could be my niece. No, no, this relationship is too messy. Rongyu was silent for a moment. A complex and deep color flashed across his downcast eyes, and he didn't know what he was thinking in his heart. Your Majesty. Rongyu came back to his senses and his expression returned to normal. After lunch, go and take a nap. I will deal with some things in the study in the afternoon. If you have anything to do, you can go to the study to find me, or you can ask Yunya to find it. Nan 11 nodded, yes. I had no time to spare in the morning. After lunch, I stayed in the inner hall and slept for more than an hour. The two maids knelt respectfully in front of the couch, one beating her legs and the other massaging the soles of her feet, serving Nan 11 like the Queen Mother Lafayette. Nan 11 once refused, but Yunya said that this was the prince's order and could not be violated, so Nan 11 didn't say anything more and just calmly acted like an old Buddha. I felt comfortable being taken care of and slept soundly. It was already evening when I woke up. Nan 11 was very energetic, and she got up to wash up with the maid waiting on her. Behind her, Yin Yu handed her a towel and reported, both Mr. Wen and Miss Wen are here. Nan 11 just wiped her face like this. Yun Yu thought she was unhappy and said hurriedly, the prince did not see Miss Wen, so he only asked Mr. Wen to be taken to the study to discuss matters. At this time, Miss Wen was sitting in the flower hall of the palace drinking tea. He said that he was waiting for the girl to wake up and wanted to follow him. Girl, talk. Miss Wen wants to talk to her? Nan 11 sighed and wiped the water stains on her face slowly. Her voice sounded a little indifferent. Didn't we just meet this morning? And it seemed that we were not in a happy mood. At this moment, the relationship between me and her, what can you say? Yunyu smiled and said, I'm afraid this girl is just a drunkard who doesn't care about drinking. The drunkard's intention is not to drink. Indeed. Nan 11 knew exactly what Miss Wen was planning, but then again, since the other party took the initiative to talk to her, or negotiate, Nan 11 had no reason not to go. After all, she is already a serious mistress in the eyes of Rongyu and all the servants in the regent's palace. Nan 11 has also decided to marry Rongyu. Although they have not yet gotten married, as long as her attitude towards Rongyu remains unchanged, then probably no one in this world can separate the two of them. Besides, she is now living in the regent's palace in a grand manner. If guests come to visit, wouldn't it be rude for her to avoid them? After washing, the maid handed her a cup of tea to soothe her throat. Nan 11 walked to the window with a teacup in her hand. The long moonlight gauze skirt on her body hung down to her ankles, and shone brightly under the glow of the rays. It looked like little golden lights flickering in the mountain stream, and her eyes were filled with brilliance. After drinking a cup of tea slowly, she handed the cup to the maid next to her, turned around and walked out. Yunyu followed closely. Walk straight along the veranda, turn at the end, and walk slowly along the corridor. There are precious and beautiful potted plants on the small flower walls on both sides of the corridor. The lake outside the corridor is sparkling, and a breeze blows, refreshing and cool. Wenlan sat in the flower hall, reading a book. There were 4 maids standing on her left and right, all with their eyebrows lowered and eyes downcast, looking reserved and contented. Nan 11 saw the scene from afar, and her eyes casually swept across the faces of several maids, and found that the maid who had mocked her in the morning was not there. It seemed that Wenlan did not want to recall the unpleasantness of the morning, so she was particular about who she brought with her. As expected of a talented girl from the Wen family, she never forgets to read when she goes out. Nan 11 smiled and walked into the flower hall gracefully. Miss Wen's love of learning really makes ordinary people like me ashamed. Wenlan put down the book in his hand, looked up at her, and gently raised his hand. Miss Nan, please sit down. Nan 11's expression paused slightly, then sneered, and did not comment on Wen Ian's self-righteous tone. She brushed her skirt and sat down opposite her. I wonder if Miss Wen has anything to say to me. I want to talk to Miss Nan alone about something. Although Wenlan deliberately spoke in a plain tone, she could not hide the arrogance that had been engraved in her bones. Please, Miss Nan, dismiss the people around you. That won't work. Before Nan 11 could speak, Yin Yu couldn't wait to intervene. The prince ordered me and Yin Shuang to protect the girl closely. We are not allowed to leave the girl at any time. Please don't embarrass us, Miss Wen. The regent is a yandere who needs to be pampered. Author, Nan Huang. Chapter 88. Early before Nan 11 came, a maid from the regent's palace brought hot tea and snacks. After Nan 11 sat down, Yin Yu took the initiative to pour Nan 11 a cup of tea, and then quietly retreated to stand behind Nan 11. Yin Yu obviously did not intend to give face to Miss Wen's request to dismiss the attendants. Miss Wen, you can say whatever you want. Nan 11 smiled faintly. Yin Yu and Yin Shuang are not gossipy people. When Ian's expression was calm, some words are not suitable for a third person to hear. Nan 11 was silent after hearing this, and then nodded indifferently. In this case, Yin Yu, Yin Shuang, you can go out first and stand where you can't hear our conversation. Miss. Go. Nan 11 said, in the palace, are you afraid that someone will harm me? Yin Yu still wanted to struggle. Although this is reasonable, her prince's order is very strong, that is, they are not allowed to leave the girl's side. Indeed, being in the regent's palace, there is no fear that anyone will dare to harm Nan 11. Let's not talk about whether Wenlan has this ability. Even if she does, she won't be stupid enough to risk the future and fate of the entire Wen family. They all understand this principle, but understanding is one thing. If Nan 11 really loses a hair, even if she loses the entire Wen family, it may not be able to eliminate the prince's anger. That's why Yin Yu is so unwilling. However, Nan 11 is indeed a little curious about the purpose of Wen Ian's coming here at this time. She turned her head and said, "Be obedient, stand outside the flower hall, and I will have a private talk with Miss Wen for a while." Yin Yu's mouth twitched. Private talk. Nan 11 looked at the four maids behind Wen Lan, and said calmly, "Should Miss Wen's maids also retreat?" Wen Lan nodded, "Of course." After that, he raised his hand casually and gestured, "You all go outside and wait." "Yes, miss." Seeing Nan 11's firm attitude, Yin Yu and Yin Chuang had to turn around and walk outside obediently, but they didn't dare to go far. They stood close to the pillars beside the corridor, always paying attention to the movements in the flower hall. Nan 11 said, "Miss Wen, you can say whatever you want to say now." Wen Lan pondered for a moment, as if thinking about how to start. Miss Nan should have a very important position in the heart of the regent. Nan 11 did not expect her to start with such a sentence, and raised her eyebrows slightly. What does Miss Wen want to say? The regent probably really wants to marry Miss Nan. Wen Lan smiled lightly, but does Miss Nan think she is worthy of the regent? Nan 11 wanted to close the door and let the dog out. Sure enough, she shouldn't be curious. Disgusting people are disgusting wherever they go. Whether I am worthy of the regent should have nothing to do with others. Nan 11 curled her lips, with a hint of mockery at the corner of her lips. If the regent thinks I am worthy, then I am obviously worthy. Wen Lan turned her head to look outside the pavilion, and said calmly, "To be honest, the current emperor is not a tolerant and generous emperor." Nan 11's eyebrows moved slightly. So what? The regent holds 2/3 of the military power of the three great kingdoms, and has great power in the court. No minister in the court disrespects him, and no one does not fear him. Wen Lan turned his head and looked at Nan 11, "If you were the emperor, wouldn't you be restless day and night, and wish to get rid of him immediately?" "So what?" Nan 11 sneered casually, "the emperor is just thinking about it. He can't do anything to the regent. When the emperor is more powerful and the throne is stable in the future, there will definitely be a day when he and the regent will break up." Nan 11 smiled lightly. "As the granddaughter of the Grand Tutor, I thought Miss Wen only needed to learn the arts of music, chess, calligraphy and painting well, and maintain her reputation as a talented woman, to be a qualified noble lady from a noble family. I didn't expect Miss Wen to be able to guess the emperor's mind. This is not speculation, I am just stating a fact that will definitely happen in the near future." Wen Lan looked at her expressionlessly. All the civil and military officials in the court predicted this result. "So what?" Wen Lan said, "If the regent was not born late, the throne of the emperor would not be taken by others." Nan 11 said lightly, "But he was born late, what can we do about it?" Wen Lan looked arrogant, "But don't you think that a man as proud as him should be born to stand proudly in the clouds? A man like Rong Yu is indeed born noble and never submits to others, like a white crane standing proudly above the sky." Nan 11 wholeheartedly agrees with this. In this cognition, she and Wen Lan can be regarded as heroes with similar views. The regent has military power, and many of the civil and military officials in the court are his confidants. With the support of the Wen family, I believe that even if he really falls out with the emperor in the future, he can still do it. "What do you mean?" Nan 11 interrupted her, her tone as light as water. "Miss Wen means to let the regent usurp the throne." "Not usurpation," Wen Lan denied. "When the power in the hands of the regent is large enough, he can completely abolish the emperor." Nan 11 looked at her steadily. The color in his eyes was strange and unpredictable. "Miss Wen is very brave." "Miss Nan, don't be surprised," Wen Lan said. "Any large family with thriving branches and leaves can't just look at the surface and ignore the crisis behind it." Nan 11 said, "Is there a crisis in the Wen family?" Wen Lan said, "Not yet, but everything needs to be prevented before it happens. Nan 11 held the teacup, sipped the tea carelessly, and said nothing. The meaning of Wen Ian's words is very clear. If one day in the future, the regent and the emperor have a fierce conflict, and the two sides have to decide whether to win or lose, the Wen family can stand on the side of the regent. Rong Yu had military power and confidence in the court. If he really wanted to usurp the throne, it would be almost effortless. However, there are inevitably a few pedantic and stubborn veterans in the court. The major families behind these veterans have deep roots and are difficult to shake for a while. If they cause trouble, the impact will not be small. So if there is another strong support from Mr. Wen, then this last obstacle will disappear directly. Nan 11 understood that Wen Lan used this incident to negotiate terms with her today. But Nan 11 didn't intend to negotiate any deal with her at all. She raised her eyes to look at Wen Lan and said calmly, "You should go directly to the regent about the throne of Zhongshan, and you should talk in secret in the study. You know that I know, no a third person should know. I'm afraid it's not appropriate for us two young ladies to talk about this. I like the regent. Except for the regent, no one from this imperial family can catch my eye," Wen Lan said in an arrogant tone. "My requirements are not high. As long as the regent marries me, then the Wen family will be his most powerful one in the future backing." Nan 11 raised her eyebrows and raised her red lips slightly. "Isn't this a high request? Does Miss Wen think she is destined by the Golden Phoenix?" The author has something to say. Babies, please leave a lot of comments if you have any questions. You can ask them in the book review, communicate with each other, and build a beautiful and harmonious book review area. Okay. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The regent is a yandere who needs to be pampered. Author, Nan Huang. Chapter 89. Isn't this too demanding? Being the regent princess is already an unparalleled honor. If the regent really becomes the emperor in the future, the Wen family will directly have a queen, and the Wen family will become the emperor's palace with unlimited glory. How dare she say that such a request is not high? Nan 11 really wanted to laugh. Teacher Wen used to be the teacher of the princes. When the current emperor was young, he should have been the tutor's own student. Nan 11 looked at Wen Lan calmly and said in a light voice, "And the regent went to the battlefield when he was a teenager. I have a distant relationship with this grand tutor. Is it possible that Grand Tutor Wen would rather abandon his students to support the regent, even at the cost of being accused of being a rebellious minister?" Wen Lan held the teacup and said calmly, "This is my grandfather's business. Miss Nan doesn't need to ask any more questions." "Indeed, there is no need to ask more." Nan 11 smiled lightly, "because I can't agree to this matter. If Miss Wen is a smart person, she shouldn't come to me to talk about this matter. You are not afraid that I will turn around and go to the emperor? Complain. You will not betray the regent." Wen Lan looked at her. "We are all discerning people." Nan 11's expression suddenly became a little subtle. "A discerning eye? Well, no matter how narcissistic Wen Ian's words are, just think that they are all discerning people." Nan 11 sighed, "Since you know that I will not betray the regent, how could you have such a stupid idea and think that I will agree to your ridiculous proposal?" Wen Lan was not angry. "You can also make any requests from me. Miss Wen is afraid that her trip today will be in vain." Nan 11 smiled and shook her head. "I am not interested in Miss Wen's proposal at all, and I have no request to make to you. If I really want to make any request, then just ask Miss Wen not to bother me again. We should be on a good-natured relationship, and I have no intention of interfering with the regent's affairs." "You are already interfering." Wen Lan raised his eyes and looked at Nan 11 with a colder look. "Don't you think it's selfish for Miss Nan to occupy the position of mistress of the regent's palace as the daughter of a merchant?" Nan 11 was silent for a moment, thinking that there might be something wrong with Miss Wen's brain. "Wrong? You likes me, and I also like Rong Yu. Nan 11 looked at her with some pity. Rong Yu only wants to marry me, is there anything wrong with me being with him? Could it be that Miss Wen thinks that the regent is the city anyone who sees the wildflowers on the mountains in the suburbs can pick them? Wen Ian's face stiffened for a moment, and then he smiled lightly. Miss Nan, can you speak more politely? I am the daughter of a merchant and cannot learn to be elegant. Nan 11 has always been calm and calm. When Miss Wen is free, she doesn't need to spend all her thoughts on knowledge. When she has time, she can go out and see people. It's really unrealistic to be immersed in your own world all day long, thinking that everything around you revolves around you, and weaving dreams with the glory that your grandfather created for you. When Ian's face changed slightly, and his tone suddenly turned cold, are you mocking me? Can you hear it? Nan 11 smiled and shook her head. It's not a sarcasm, it's just a well-intentioned suggestion. Of course, it's up to you whether you listen or not. Wen Lan said coldly, if I become the regent princess, I can let you be the concubine. We are sisters, and I can guarantee that no matter what happens in the future, I will not be disadvantageous to you. Nan 11 was slightly shocked when she heard this. She was really surprised, and even looked at Wen Lan in disbelief. Just how self-righteous is this man? Even if you are a side concubine, when you enter the palace in the future, you will be at least one of the 4 concubines. Wen Lan obviously has not realized that he is already a retarded person in Nan 11's eyes, and is still throwing out the bait that he thinks is superior. We live in peace, it shouldn't be difficult. Nan 11 is not bored enough to think about whether it is possible to live in peace in the future. She only has one thought now. She feels that sitting here is a waste of time. Miss Wen really has no self-awareness at all. She stood up, the curve of her lips showing ridicule and pity that no longer needed to be concealed. Although I parted ways with Miss Wen on bad terms in the morning, I treated everyone who came as a guest. I am also willing to live in peace with Miss Wen, but since Miss Wen has brought her words to this point, I might as well tell you today that Rong Yu is mine. When Ian's expression changed. Whether he is the current regent or will have another identity in the future, Rong Yu only belongs to me. I will not share him with anyone. Calling him a sister? It's a joke, Nan 11 said in a tone of voice. He was calm but determined, even a little domineering. Whether it's his wife or his concubine, the position next to him can only be mine, so Miss Wen doesn't have to have any more delusions. Wen Lan stood up and said in a cold tone, the regent is not an object, why do you occupy him? Isn't it enough that the person he likes is me? Nan 11 raised her eyebrows. If Miss Wen has a way to convince the regent to marry you, you don't have to lower yourself to negotiate terms with me, a businesswoman. Well, if that's the case, why do you think I am? Wen Ian's expression was cold. As for what Miss Wen just said about making my grandfather willing to help, that has nothing to do with me. You can ask your grandfather to come forward and talk to the regent, even if the regent thinks that your Wen family has the intention to rebel and wants to deal with your Wen family. That's because you are stupid and have no one to blame. The words fell slowly and slowly. Wen Lan could no longer maintain his composure. His face turned blue and white, and he tightened the handkerchief in his hand. Nan 11, you'd better think carefully. There's nothing to consider, Nan 11 said calmly. After talking with Miss Wen today, I know more about what kind of girl Miss Wen is. There's a saying that goes, it's better to meet her than to hear about her. I think it makes sense. After that, he smiled faintly. Miss Wen, please do as you please. I'm sorry I won't accompany you. When Ian's expression darkened, staring coldly at her back as she left calmly. Her beautiful and proud eyebrows were shrouded in a layer of gloom. If eyes could kill, Nan 11's back would have been pierced with countless small holes at this time. Is the girl finished? Yin Yu followed and whispered, what did Miss Wen say to you? Nan 11 tilted her head to look at her, and the corners of her lips curved slightly. She said something funny. Funny things? Yin Yu was really curious. What funny things did Miss Wen say? I thought she was here to cause trouble, but I didn't expect she was here to tell jokes to the girl. Tell jokes? Nan 11 thought for a while. Well, she did come to tell jokes to me. Sisters. Let her be a concubine? What is this if not a joke? Window. Tabula equals window. Tabula. Tabula.push, mode, thumbs feed -01, container, tabula below article thumbnail -300x250, placement, below article thumbnail -300x250, target. Type, mix. The regent is a yandere who needs to be pampered. Author, Nan Huang. Chapter 90. Until she arrived at Zhaochen Hall, Nan 11 still had an indescribable smile on her face, but it was true that she was in a good mood, so much so that she didn't even notice Rong Yu coming in. What's so funny? Huh, Nan 11 turned her head. The moment she saw Rong Yu, she smiled so much that her eyebrows arched. Are you done? Rong Yu nodded and looked at her expression calmly. Seeing that she didn't seem displeased, his eyebrows relaxed slightly. Did you meet Wenlan just now? When Wenlan was mentioned, Nan 11 couldn't help but laugh again. Yes, we met. Rong Yu was silent, his dark eyes falling deeply on her beautiful face, and there seemed to be some confusion in his eyes. Miss Wen. Nan 11 pondered for a moment, as if she was considering her words. She's very cute. Cute. Rong Yu frowned slightly, wondering what was so cute about Wenlan. Nan 11 recalled what Wenlan said to him. The more she thought about it, the more she couldn't help but want to laugh. Rong Yu only smiled inexplicably. The girl has been laughing like this for a while. Yunyu was really puzzled. I'm also curious. Miss Wen seems to be coming with bad intentions, but somehow she made the girl so happy. Nan 11 raised her eyebrows and smiled without saying a word. You guys step back first, Rong Yu said. Yes, Yunyu responded, raised her hand to indicate, and respectfully led several maids in the palace to retreat. Rong Yu stared at her smiling face and whispered, what is so funny? Nan 11 looked at him with full eyes, her pupils sparkling even more with the smile. What that Miss Wen said is funny. Rong Yu frowned and his expression turned cold. Wenlan is causing trouble for you. Nan 11 shook her head. To be precise, it should be negotiation. Rong Yu pursed his lips. Negotiation. Thinking about what Wenling said in the study just now, he almost instantly guessed what the so-called negotiation meant. Sure enough, Nan 11 quickly said, that Miss Wen said that the Wen family is willing to stand behind the prince, on the condition that the prince marries Wenlan as his wife, the regent and concubine that the Ming media is marrying. Well, Miss Wen is particularly tolerant and generous. She allowed me to be my concubine and said that she would be worthy of being a sister and would never do anything harmful to me in the future. Rong Yu pursed her thin lips tightly, her expression was as cold and sharp as a blade, and the killing intent flashed in her eyes. Don't make trouble. Nan 11 stretched out her hand to smooth the peak of his eyebrows. The smile on her lips showed that she didn't take this matter to heart. I said, she is just a joke. Your Majesty can also treat them as one joke. Rong Yu frowned and locked her eyes tightly. Aren't you angry? What's there to be angry about? Nan 11 put her hands around his neck and kissed him proactively. Young Master Wen came here to talk to the prince about today's affairs. Rong Yu hummed, held her waist, walked to the low couch next to him, sat down on it, and held her tightly in his arms. Nan 11 kissed his face. Miss Wen said that as a merchant's daughter, I occupied the position of mistress of the regent's palace, which was very selfish. Rong Yu was a little frightened by her kiss. When he heard these words, he didn't have time to get angry. But maybe it was also because Nan 11 didn't look displeased at all when she said this, so he just listened in silence to her elaboration. Nan 11 sat on Rong Yu's lap, her arms hooked around his neck, and her voice was soft. Do you think I'm selfish, Your Majesty? Rong Yu's mind wandered, and his voice became deeper. No, I like you like this. Nan 11 curled her lips and smiled contentedly. I told Miss Wen the same thing. I said that if the prince doesn't like her, he only likes me. Wrong, you hummed, I only like you. Whether it is now or in the future, even when you are gray-haired, here. Nan 11's slender fingers slowly moved down and touched the position of Wrong Yu's heart. You can only pretend to be me, no room is allowed for anyone else. Wrong Yu's eyes deepened, and he couldn't help lowering his head and biting her tender earlobe. There will be no place for others, only you, forever, only you. Nan 11 was slightly numb from his bite, and the thorns on her earlobes hurt. Your Majesty, please don't bite me yet. I haven't finished speaking yet. Wrong Yu's voice was low and soft. You keep talking, I'm listening. You bite me like this, what else can I say? Nan 11 dodged a little, her neck was bitten and itched. There is something, what she said, but, it makes sense. What words? She said that she and I both have a discerning eye. I think it makes sense. She does have a discerning eye and looks at people differently from other superficial women. Nan 11 smiled, but, oh, it's itchy. Wrong you, don't. Wrong you was a little unfinished, but seeing the red marks on her fair neck, she restrained her impulse. Wrong you. Nan 11 reached out and touched the center of his eyebrows, swiping lightly in a seductive way. I am a very domineering person, and I can't tolerate sand in my eyes. If you like me, you will like me forever. Wrong you raised his eyes, and there seemed to be some incomprehensible color in his deep eyes. In this life, you are the only one. The main concubine, the beloved concubine, and the concubine are all me. Well, it's all you. Miss Wen said you are not an object. I have no right to occupy you, but I want to tell you, I want to occupy you for a lifetime. Oh no, a lifetime is not enough. I want you to be unable to escape my clutches for all eternity. Nan 11 opened her slender and white right hand and threatened, anyone who dares to take advantage of you, I will make her disappear into thin air. If it is said that the moment Nan 11 woke up gave him a surprise, then in the past 2 days of getting along, Wrong you felt that he was reaping surprises all the time. He looked at the playful girl in front of him, his heart was tightly surrounded by long-lost satisfaction and fulfillment, and the corners of his lips pursed tightly revealed a little emotion that was not detectable. He tightened his arms around her waist, wishing he could stuff her into his chest. Only you, there will be no one else except you. Nan 11 felt the strength of his arm, and doubts arose in her heart again. Is Wrong you too obedient to her? He said yes to everything she said. The regent king who is so powerful that even the king is afraid of him, the commander of the Suanjia army who led his troops to the battlefield when he was a teenager and made the enemy tremble with fear, the cold and indifferent prince, the noble and unattainable god in the eyes of outsiders, is he so passionate and paranoid in his feelings? Yes, it is paranoid. Although he tried his best to hold back in front of her, always looking noble and gentle, Nan 11 could feel the paranoia in his bones, especially the scenes in his previous life were still vivid. Wrong you. Nan 11 said quietly, when did you start to like me? Window. Tabula equals window. Tabula. Tabula.push, mode, thumbspeed -01, container, tabula below article thumbnail -300x250, placement, below article thumbnail -300x250, target. Type, mix.